Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Lanée Mellegard, VP of Revenue and Marketing at Volusion, and I'm glad to be here with you all. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. First, we'll be sending you a link to watch the recording of this webinar in a follow-up email tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Second, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them during this call, and then we'll include the answers in that follow-up email tomorrow. And lastly, to learn more about how Volusion payments powered by Stripe can help you and your business, visit the link that was included in the webinar email. We'll also include that in the follow-up email that we'll send out tomorrow. So lots of great information coming your way. Without further ado, let's get started. In today's webinar, we're going to be chatting with an expert to learn what it takes to cultivate an adaptive mindset and prepare for the changes ahead. Joining me is Connor Holloway, an account manager from our partner Stripe. Connor, thank you for joining us today, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Lanée, for having me. Expert is quite the nice intro. I've been at Stripe for 4 years now. I've spent the last year working with Volusion. I know we don't actually have any customers on the call today because it's a webinar, but I'm really excited because we've spent so many of our conversations talking about the technology and capabilities for your customers. So hopefully today is informative. We can share a little bit about Stripe. And of course, if there are any questions after this, happy to help too.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda to set the expectations for our time today. We'll plan on discussing 3 different areas. First, an adaptive mindset, followed by the 3 traits of adaptive businesses, and we'll end with Volusion payments powered by Stripe. So let's get started and we'll dive into each of these. So starting with the adaptive mindset. So, the nature of business today, we know that change is inevitable, right? I've personally seen stats recently that say only 50% of small businesses survive past 5 years. So with that said, I think it's even more important for us to anticipate change and be adaptable to that change. So, Connor, you work with businesses every day to overcome challenges and reach new goals. What does everyone need to know about becoming more adaptive?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right on the statistics. The e-commerce environment is ultra competitive in recent years. We've seen a tremendous growth, and we're quite hopeful that it's still climbing. And the way we think about this is we think that growth represents a massive opportunity. However, to gain a competitive advantage, businesses definitely need to embrace an adaptive mindset. More than anything, one of the biggest changes that we're seeing is just the speed at which the end customers' needs, habits, desires, and their behaviors are changing as well. Because it moves so fast, sometimes it can feel really impossible to keep up with this. In theory, we realize that it sounds really easy, but anyone who's experienced firsthand knows that to keep up with cutting edge technology is really, really difficult. And so we're not alone in believing this is a massive opportunity. Forrester, a leading research firm, they put out a report even in 2019. They interviewed hundreds of executives, and they found that businesses with this adaptive mindset end up growing 3 times faster than their industry peers.
Wow, okay. So we're talking about an overall state of mind, right? So a mindset that embraces and drives change. As you mentioned, with that mindset, businesses take a proactive rather than reactive approach to their business strategy. So how can we make that shift and adopt that proactive and adaptive mindset?
Yeah, there are 3 traits. We're gonna go very deep on them. Well, I hope we'll go deep on them. I guess, Lanée, you can keep me honest the rest of this conversation, but we probably wouldn't be here unless we talked about payments. Obviously, Stripe's perspective, we think it's true with Volusion too, is that payments is a really integral part of this experience. And so the way we think about adaptive, or the way we think about payments for adaptive businesses is it's no longer just a transaction or a commodity. We see payments much more in actually overall very important part of the customer experience with the product that you're selling. We're going to get into this more specifically, but payments rooted in flexible technology that can serve all the money movement needs of a business, like optimizing auth rates and fighting fraud, adding new business lines, expanding to global markets. These are the types of components and characteristics that adaptive businesses really embrace. Okay, let's dig into them. We go to the next slide too. Thank you, Lanée, for driving. Okay, so the first trait, which may sound really obvious, was actually incredibly important, is staying ahead as technology moves forward. So put simply, an adaptive business is able to shift to meet demand. How does it do that? Well, ideally, that business has already invested in new technology and infrastructure ahead of that demand. So one key to moving quickly from our perspective of payments is to think about being able to accept payments anytime, any place, and any method that that end customer wants. Great example of this is what happened to a lot of businesses in the COVID-19 pandemic and the shift to buy now, pay laters. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of businesses that were built on legacy payment infrastructure weren't actually able to move quickly enough to meet that demand and hadn't previously anticipated it. That said, we think it'd be like pretty unrealistic for we don't reasonably expect every business to think through all the future optionality and considerations, and of course to build those capabilities themselves.
So on that point then, how would we, I guess, how would you recommend that businesses navigate that shifting market demand and by themselves? Do they need to keep an open mind for looking for capable partners, or, what can really help them move their businesses forward?
Yeah, many of our conversations with Stripe are around what can we offload for a business. So choosing the right partner is so much about that huge difference in allowing you to be more competitive, outsourcing things that are undifferentiated. Stripe can handle them for you from an infrastructure standpoint, and you can go out and meet your customer demands.
Great.
Second key trait. Sorry, I forget that I'm on the transition there. I'm so excited about these traits. The second trait is that we want to focus on today is evolving business models in changing market conditions. We're definitely seeing some of that now. We certainly have over the past couple of years as well. You probably chose your business model with a lot of intention, and at the same time, market dynamics are always fluctuating, and we believe creating new revenue opportunities. Some examples of this recently: online shopping, telemedicine, curbside pickup, gift cards, even new delivery models. We've seen a huge explosion over the last 24 months across all sectors. Ideally, like we previously discussed, you're investing in these capabilities before the market demands it. However, another way to think about that question you just asked, when they of choosing the right partner, is having a partner that allows you to offer these business models, or thinking through these models, even if they may not exist or on your radar yet. And so this allows you to navigate really chaotic environments. I think some really strong examples of this that probably everyone on this call is very familiar with is that we saw over the last couple of years is some really amazing adaptive business responses. So think about like gyms that all of a sudden were offering online subscriptions, or brick and mortar retail stores that were selling online for the first time, or even like big box stores offering same-day local delivery. These are the types of capabilities that Stripe was able to deliver in the face of the changing market conditions. I think the really important point here too is I'm not a macroeconomist, but there are some things that are going on in the macroeconomy that we think there will be some more changes. Although we are not sure what that looks like, we're laser focused on enabling these capabilities so that our customers can continue to remain resilient and adaptive in the face of the changes.
Great. So then what about the third trait? What else should businesses strive for?
Okay, if you're not sick of listening to me talk so far in the first two traits, the third, which again, I think to many folks on this call may sound obvious, but at the same time a little scary, is entering new global markets. It can be complex from the technological standpoint, from the regulatory standpoint. However, in many ways, it's one of the best avenues to go to seek revenue maximizing opportunities.
Okay, and can you give us some examples of how would they exactly do that to expand into expand globally?
Sure. So there's one option, and then there's the Stripe option. One option is you go and you enable those technologies yourself. You get into deep in the local requirements and the licensing. You can imagine that would be really complicated. Or with Volusion, payments powered by Stripe, actually there's no integration work required. We present in 135 different currencies. We're live in 35 global markets. Actually, you are set up today just to turn that on and test new markets very easily.
Great. That's awesome news. Okay, so you shared some great insight on how businesses can be adaptive. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little more about how our Stripe partnership, Volusion Payments Powered by Stripe, helps businesses cultivate the traits we've been talking about. You just mentioned it a little bit, so can you dive a little deeper into that? Yeah,
I jumped the gun a bit, but that's why I'm on the call, and I'm really excited about the partnership. I mentioned like the infrastructure is already in place, but yeah, let's talk about that infrastructure a bit and what's available to the customers. So for those that don't know, we hope at this point many people are familiar with Stripe, but I walk down the street all the time and no one has any idea what it is, but we serve millions of customers around the world. 90% of US adults purchase something on Stripe. So hopefully that means the majority of people in this conversation. We just talked a little bit about global and the scale we present on 135 different currencies. We're going to talk a little bit more about payment methods, but also in 35 countries in which you can go live in a single integration.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, more Stripe products. Okay, so we talked about the global piece. We talked a little bit about buy now, pay later. So the integration that Volusion has built is, as a customer, you're able to turn on payment methods like Afterpay and Klarna, local payment methods in any geography around the world, but even just in the US, Apple Pay, Google Pay, meeting your customers exactly where they are. And we think the biggest component here is that Stripe is constantly integrating these new payment methods based off consumer demand. What that looks like for you as a business is no additional integration work required. You just click a button and you are able to see that transaction increase, because customers like to pay with their preferred payment method. I think everyone relates to that, whether it's I forgot my wallet and I wanted to pay with Apple Pay the other day at the grocery store, or if I'm in a different country and actually don't use credit card as much, we really need to meet those customers where they are. That's payments. There's some underlying infrastructure behind it as well. We do a lot to increase checkout conversion and improve your authorization rates. Obviously, the biggest component here is that your customers leave with a delightful checkout experience, which is really important as we think about that product experience. And then although it's not on here, we also, particularly with the macro environment, want to talk a little bit about instant payouts, particularly if cash flow is an issue. Stripe Instant Payouts solves the problem by smoothing deposits and allowing you to cover some unexpected expenses as well.
Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of great features here.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit, one thing I hear, just in talking with merchants and with people in the industry in general, businesses, some of the big concerns are around fraud. Can you talk about what's required for having that tech forward approach and being able to really tackle that issue?
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately, digital fraud, global fraud for online transactions is on the rise. We see that given the scale that we were talking about. Thankfully, for the last 8 years, Stripe has had a tool, we call it Stripe Radar, which is how we help you fight fraud. The main benefit of this is actually the scale at which we operate. So we talk about those 90% of US adults where we've seen that credit card before, or actually in any given moment scanning billions of data points to make sure that we block fraudulent transactions and also increase the likelihood that the right transactions are going through for your customers. Again, like the biggest piece here that is interesting, the reason it works so well is it's a single integration with Stripe. We're taking advantage of all of that data and infrastructure. But you as a business, again, you don't need to go out and build a third-party integration. You click a button and Radar is turned on.
That's awesome. All right. So next, could you tell us what Stripe can do for businesses in general? What, regards to the second trait you discussed, can we talk more about what Stripe can do?
Yeah. So the second trait, is a reminder, it's just evolving your business models in changing market conditions. We teased this a little bit, but the way I like to talk about this with customers is any type of way your end customer would like to pay, Stripe can support that. Online, in-person subscriptions, an in-person transaction that turns into a subscription, any way that can get crazy. Stripe makes it really, really easy and simple to test new revenue models, and especially to build out hybrid consumer experiences. Again, the point I really want to drive home, if you're not sick of hearing it already, is like, because that is a single integration, actually it decreases your time to market, reduces any complexity that you have to go out and manage a new vendor relationship or integrate a new technology. The majority of these are coming straight out of the box through Volusion. Great.
And then let's touch on the third trait too, entering new markets. What about that and how Stripe works with that?
Yeah, I got excited about this one too and shared some of the points. Global is really exciting and really hard. Let's assume that even without Stripe, you went and you negotiated some partnerships, you built the technology, you built into the banking rails, And all of a sudden you realize that you were trying to sell in the Netherlands and you only accepted credit cards, but you had no idea that actually all the consumers there pay on Ideal. So when we think about our partnership with Volusion and what you've enabled for your customers, it's a single integration to go in any global market. And then the really important piece there too is within those global markets, it's optimized checkout conversion. So what that customer sees is local to their market, whether that is a payment method, a bank debit, or even a buy now, pay later. It's a single integration. And of course, like just to state the obvious, it's really big impact to your bottom line, but also it's a delightful customer experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so that point really ties into the larger theme you mentioned at the start, right? We talked about, payments rooted in technology as this theme, and that being the key to building an adaptive business. So, that's something we can attest to from working with businesses to adapt to changing norms and reach for new goals, right?
Yeah, in your businesses, we've talked about this a lot. They understand this. They understand that payments are not a commodity, it's a strategic lever. They have an opportunity to deliver an experience for your customer, to make it seamless, but also to maximize revenue. And so part of that, we really think about this checkout process as a brand moment. And we're biased, but we believe like the payments platform that you choose does a lot about your brand and also can have a big impact on your conversion. I know when I check out places, if it doesn't load, if it doesn't save my credit card, if I've never seen the company before that's powering it, particularly what we've been talking about, the question you asked about fraud, Lanée, I do find I have a little bit more hesitation. That only grows in magnitude if I'm shopping somewhere international as well. So we do think often about the brand of Volusion behind the checkout experience as well. And yeah, I guess to put it really simply, your payment strategy directly impacts the bottom line and the overall health of your company. So we've talked about a lot of what that means for the business, but also on the customer side, just the seamless purchasing experience. They understand what they're paying for, where it's coming from, and of course that increases the likelihood that they'll come back. So the really good news about all this, I can get off my soapbox of how excited I am, but the really good news is Volusion already built this integration with Stripe. All of the things we've talked about today, and actually many more, are available out of the box. We feel really confident that the capabilities that we've built for your customers actually will enable them to have these adaptive mindsets, to anticipate needs, or let Stripe anticipate them for them when the change does come, of course, to be able to be really nimble and try out new business models, meet customer demand where they are. And of course, if there's an opportunity to expand globally too, that's always on the table and an opportunity that we're really, really excited about too.
Yeah, definitely. I know we're really excited to bring these capabilities and features to our merchants. And if anyone is interested in talking about payments or any of the topics we've touched today, you can reach out to speak with an expert about how you can add Volusion payments powered by Stripe to your business. Connor, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this great information with us. It's a lot of information. I know I'm going to be going back and looking over it, and I'm glad we'll be sharing this out with our group here tomorrow as well. So thank you all, and thank you, Connor.
Thanks, Lanée. Thanks for hosting.